letters, yeah, so A, 11 letters, Y, accessibility. So, okay, so before we begin, I want to tell you 4 things. So, I always like to begin with rules. There are going to be just 2 rules, as you see. One of the rules is that I would just want one person to speak at a time. It is very easy for me to get overwhelmed. No, it doesn't matter how prepared I am and how comfortable and everything. So if you feel urgency to say something, just raise your hand. I will see you. Okay? And another thing, ask questions to learn, not to debate. If you want to debate, just catch me later. But we only have 1 hour and a half, and I really want to get you as passionate about accessibility as possible. But all confusions, all questions, worries, and comments are so appreciated. Cool. And as I said, it is I got really excited about web accessibility. Way before I was excited about web or about software engineering. So maybe it is also a good time to introduce myself. I'm Sylwia, and I am current Mod 3 SEC. Previously, thank you. Previously, I was a student here, and in my previous life, I was human rights activist in Poland and also researcher in sociology of nation. In both of these capacities, I was feeling very strongly about who can participate in what and why not, and how can we make any kind of activity more accessible, right? So I would always look into not only the accessibility is understood as for example the infrastructure, but also the language. And now that I am a migrant, I just migrated here a year and a half ago. I also get to experience different dimensions of accessibility here in the US, and I have a lot of opinions. So that's one thing about me. I'm also, funny thing is that I'm also myself a person with disability, and so I was very much excited about web accessibility before I was aware of that. I actually belong to one of those groups, so that's a fun fact. So because of that, I also get, as I said, very easily overwhelmed, and I guess that when we'll be speaking about web accessibility, I'll be also drawing your attention to very different dimensions of what it means, for a thing to be accessible or not. So maybe we'll begin with so thinking about this little talk, I was, my end goal for you is that you leave very much excited, or at least you have some idea about what accessibility means. And I decided to do as little introduction as possible. However, I think that in order to be very excited about web accessibility, we also need to be very cognizant of what actually we are talking about, right? Because in the current world, it is so easy to say lots of things with great deal of confidence, but actually not know what it actually means. So that's why also, because I am by training, a researcher, I also like to always provide a little bit of framework so that people know where I'm coming from. So maybe for the starters, also, if you have any questions at any point, or if you feel like I misphrased something, or maybe I said something that is obnoxious, please, raise your hand. I'm very open to feedback. I actually very much welcome that. Cool. So for the starters, it's always good to know what actually is disability. So you see, this is the first gotcha, because people usually think that disability is a personal attribute, and that is something of, matter of a health, right? So this is actually, it has its roots in late 19th century. However, in a codified and global universal version, it was mostly pronounced in World Health Organization's definition from 1980, where you actually read, as you see, that this is something to do with health and something of personal issue. But guess what? Now we know that disability actually maybe it's not necessarily all that, because if you see the current definition, you just see that really what disability is, it is the mismatch between, person's state and their context. So that may sound a little bit abstract, but now think about that. So I'm a person, so it's also funny. So I'm a person with almost no sense of smell, but that's not the disability. Because in our world is not really designed to, depend that much on smell, right? So, what can happen? Like, if I say in the US, if I talk about that, everyone says, oh, so you cannot feel farts, right? Or like, so MTA is not really a big deal for you. So I can also go into linguistics of that. What's the difference in the US, where you guys don't have a name for that except for the medical term, but no one knows that. And what's the difference in, for example, Israel, where there is a name and where there's more like understanding what that actually can mean. But now imagine, but I go around the world without experiencing much stress about that, right? So now imagine my situation if, for example, I don't know, whether a shop is open or closed, that would be marked with scent, yeah? Or, for example, whether price tags would be marked with smells, or like, I don't know, all those things. So in a way, that would make me unable to participate in the modern world, right? So this is where we can actually speak mostly about disability, looking at the context which makes people unable to participate in, culture or society. Now, I'm not downplaying at all the health issues. I'm just saying that had our world been designed differently, maybe we wouldn't be maybe we wouldn't be seeing, a wheelchair as an obstacle, but just, one way to go about life, So that's just for you to like challenge your ways of thinking, yeah? So exactly. So disability is no longer perceived as a personal health condition, but as mismatched human interactions. And so it does happen. Disability really, I want to really emphasize that it only happens in interactions, between a person and society. Because you can have a perfectly amazing life, even experiencing lots of different health and situational limitations, if the world around you and also your community understands and is cognizant of that there are different ways to approach anything. Cool. So now just to give you an example, it's really funny that it is 21st century and we don't really think about so many things, So for example, if you think about that I think it's Georgia Tech, I'm happy to Slack later, there are a few good millions of books in their library. However, I think only 20,000 books written in Braille. That actually is kind of outraging, because that means that there are so many people who cannot really, use the library that actively. And now think about those 20,000 books. Think about how many of these books would be, manuals to gardening from 1960, So now, why don't we, with all the tech and all the amazing apps that are being created, why don't we, create some kind of assistive technology that interprets a book into, some way that people can actually use. So guess what? There is an invention that you most probably never heard of because it was never funded, right? It wasn't perceived as anything hot. And so basically what we are looking at, it is like a portable scanner that is connected to an MP3 player or whatever iPad, and just reads out loud what it sees on the book, right? So now you can say, oh yeah, but there are audiobooks. Okay, if audiobooks were that amazing, people wouldn't be buying books. You all know that how amazing it is to actually hold a book and hear the paper and stuff like that. So it is not about only finding a solution that would be good enough, but actually to create an experience for people who come from different backgrounds and who also experience the world differently, to allow them, to help them experience to have the same experience, quality experiences as people who do not have the same limitations. And the same, for example, this is a refreshable braille display. So I don't know whether you know, it is extremely difficult to use, for example, for people who are blind or who have visual impairments, to use Excel sheets or Word documents. But guess what? You can have a little device that prints out braille as it's, you know, in real time, so that they can type, they can read what's actually being on the screen in real time without a screen reader, right? So just to, like, both of those are just prototypes, and they are very much not difficult to build. So, you know, solutions are there. And it kind of infuriates me that, you know, in the times when there are so many, what is it called, Nintendo Wii or whatever, you know, like so many kids have that. At the same time, libraries don't have any kind of like assistive technology like that, majority of libraries, especially in smaller towns. And I was really blown away when I saw this. So this is like a glove that uses Raspberry Pi, so very simple technology, that in real time interprets and speaks out sign language. Because, you know, like, it would be nice if everyone could communicate, right? So it's not very much difficult. It's just, you know, a glove that is connected to an API and does the job. Cool. So I hope that you're inspired. That's it. Thank you. No, I'm kidding. So when I'm not reading GitHub and when I'm not, you know, raging about social justice issues, I'm actually passionately reading procedures that have been implemented in big companies and small NGOs to see how organizations work as, you know, like a collaborative, consensual, and all that stuff, communities. So on this subject, I'm very impressed by both Google and Microsoft. Not only, I mean, I know that there's lots of stuff going on because those are huge corporations. At the same time, I'm very impressed with the documents they created, and I hope that, you know, in like 3 years, they are just gonna be like obvious, right? So here's just one quote that I kind of liked from Microsoft's statement on accessibility. So their ambition is to create products that are physically, cognitively, and emotionally appropriate for each person, right? And I like this distinction because it's not only that, you know, that we need to create, I don't know, when we think about accessibility, usually people think about, I don't know, helping people who don't see, you know, experience what other people see, right? But it's not only that. There are so many other things that fall into accessibility, and I would actually stretch this definition, this kind of statement, a little bit more to include, for example, socioeconomic status, and we're gonna talk about that later. But I was very happy to see that there is the emotional part as well. Anyway. And then also Microsoft goes on to speak about responsibility. So, you know, every decision we make can raise or lower barriers to participation in society. It's our collective responsibility to lower these barriers through inclusive products, services, environments, and experiences. Yeah. So inclusivity or inclusion, that's something that I really feel strongly about. I always think about, you know, how to make it more possible for people, for example, who are not really forward to, I don't know, ask questions, or how to make it easier for people who struggle in one way or another to really have their voices or their stances heard. Yeah. So I was very happy to see that Microsoft was, you know, taking all this in a like broader spectrum, not only focusing on products or services for which they actually are paid, right? But also environments and experiences. Because also, if you think about that, how can a company create a product that will be accessible if their workspace is not accessible, right? So if their workspace, for example, is not accessible, or their community culture is not accessible, that would mean that they would only end up with a team who is exactly, you know, copy-paste of the same person, of the same kind of personality. So that would not benefit anyone, because in the end, Microsoft, unfortunately, is driven by profit. And so if you want to be as successful as possible, perhaps you want your products and services to reach everyone. Anyway, I know that Microsoft is all about selling and all that stuff, but at the same time, I just wanted to appreciate the product, services, environments, and experiences parts. Cool. So all this boils down to solve for one and extend to many. Because I don't know whether you know that, but for example, electric toothbrushes were first not designed for able-bodied or fully abled folks. They were actually designed as an assistive technology. And then it turned out that, people are lazy, so everyone wants to use them. The same, for example, Google Maps. This is more of an anecdote, so I don't know whether this is really factual. I'm happy to Google that later. But I heard that the voice navigation was actually first developed as an assistive technology to navigate people who cannot focus on the maps, or who cannot see, or all those things. So later on, it turned out that so many people can benefit from that. Drivers, for example. So maybe going about, I don't know, designing your apps, it would be cool to think about the edge cases where maybe someone cannot use your app or your product or service, right? And how to tweak your app in a way that really everyone can benefit. Just like food for thought. Okay, so now think about so this is the moment when I'm quoting our dear friend Janet. I really like, Janet wrote a blog post that I got to hear last week, and so I really like this passage. I'm actually quoting you twice in the presentation, so thank you for your contribution. I first checked in with her, so just Okay, so this is something that Janet wrote. How many times have you used dark mode on a website or app? Use closed captions to watch a video because you didn't want to use an elevator because you had an intense leg day workout. That never happened to me, workouts. But I did use an elevator and forgotten contacts or glasses and had to use pinch zoom on your phone to read a website. Guess what? You've been using accessibility. You've been benefiting from accessibility. So now, wouldn't it be great if we all designed our products and apps in a way that we wouldn't have to think about them being accessible? They would be just the standards, right? Oh, you see? Okay, so now I want you all to think about your last app, or in cases where you just started this bootcamp, maybe some project or whatever, anything that you actually thought about or created. So think. Okay, I see the thinking faces. Great. So now, just think to yourself, who did you design it for? Majority of people, when they were designing that, they were designing for themselves. And then, did you think about this that this person might have at some point use your app on their phone? Yeah, because we usually test our apps only on our fancy schmancy MacBooks. Guess what? Majority of the world doesn't use MacBooks. Have an unstable internet connection. Have ill-working mouse, and so on and so forth, right? So then, of course, I'm not placing too high expectations on you because this program is already very much stressful and intense. However, it's when you're really devoted to something, maybe it is good to think, outside of your own experience. Maybe it's good to pick brains of people who experience the world differently, or at least, are passionate about that. So what I really like to do, and in the beginning I wasn't too fond of that because, my way or no way, and my ideas are the best and all that stuff. But yeah, right now I already matured, and I know that this actually question is super important, who cannot really use your app, or who cannot really participate in a system that you designed, If you're proposing some way to go about something, some process, think about how it benefits you or people who you like and hang out with, and who perhaps could not, participate in that. So if you have any kind of feedbacking process that is based on, who speaks the fastest and the loudest and stuff, then most probably you're already excluding people who need time to process, or who are, I don't know, shy, or who are depressed, or who are just very anxious. Yeah, so there are lots of different things to think about. Okay, so now in practical terms. So everyone is very excited about Khan Academy, myself included, and it's so great because it's open source. But at some point, Khan Academy started getting lots of backlash, because guess what? They are color coding their information, and some people cannot see colors. And also another thing was that their videos did not have captions, so some people cannot hear what's being said. And also some animations where it was impossible to turn off animations, right? Which is funny that I'm speaking about that, and actually my presentation also includes animations. Even funnier thing is that I wrote to myself, hey, give people heads up that there are animations, yeah? Because if someone has any kind of condition that connects to being easily overstimulated or overwhelmed, autoplay animations are not something that you would like to serve them. But fortunately, Khan Academy reflected and sent out a huge statement, and now you can pick your color schemes, there are transcripts, and animations can be turned off. So great for them. I personally, whenever I'm thinking about accessibility, there's this one page, Leży i pracuje. Don't freak out, it's only Polish. So it is. So it's an amazing marketing agency that was started by people with, I think, English word is paraplegia. Is that a word, or am I making it up? People who basically cannot, use their limbs, right? Yeah. Paraplegic. Yeah. That's an adjective. What would be the noun?
I suppose paraplegia, like you said.
Yeah. So basically, that means people who do not have that much access, or who do not have very strong limb muscles. So the name of the marketing company means I'm laying in bed and I'm working, or like I'm chilling and I'm working, which is kind of funny. And so, the page on the first look doesn't look too amazing, but then if you click on, on this little icon on the left, on the right, you'll see this amazing functionality that allows you to do everything. Basically, reverse the colors, increase the size of the cursor, change the size of the text, change color schemes, enhance, not only enable, but enhance keyboard navigation, everything. Every single piece of content they have is also tested on screen readers, and the screen readers are in, I think, 3 different languages to reflect, also the minorities in Poland. And when I'm thinking about, the products I would like to create, web applications, I'm always very inspired by them. So, just watch me use my free time. How do you say free time? You see, this is such a foreign concept. Use my free time to develop something that would be of this magnitude. Cool. So now, the point of this whole meeting, right? How to make your website accessible. So there are like 10,000 ways, but I know that if I overwhelm you, then you'll be like, hell no, I'm not gonna be spending another 15 weeks learning that. So I thought I would make it simple, and I was also basing a lot on Janet's blog. So do these few amazing steps. First, use semantic HTML. For example, use headers, right? I know that sounds kind of obvious, but you'd be surprised how many people use, for example, span or p tag with a font size 400. You know what I mean? So instead doing that, you can just start out with a header h1, but then the gotcha is that next headers have to be in the sequence, because otherwise you're gonna confuse the screen reader so much. So remember about that. But it's also, semantic HTML is more than just headers, right? It's also, for example, if you have a group of paragraphs, you can clip them together as an article. So then when your screen reader is gonna be going through the website. By the way, all of you have screen readers on your computers already. You know, that's a fancy option you have. So when screen reader is going through your page, it would say there is a header, then there is a group of elements named article, then there is a list with five points. So if you use semantic HTML, you're just making it so much easier for the screen reader to navigate, right? Then use alt descriptions for images if they are not decorative. And when, bless you, and when we are talking about alt descriptions, don't just write image, you know? Be as descriptive as you would like to, you know, experience a picture. So for example, say, in the forefront there's a person who appears to be, let's say, a woman in her 30s. She's happy, perhaps because blah, 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 you know? Be descriptive. And unless those are just images for the sake of the text looking pretty, then just keep that. However, do add the alt, just empty. Right, alt equals empty quotation marks, so that they know, so that the screen reader knows that there is a picture actually. Keep links easily spottable. So some people are very annoyed by the underline, right? And some people are very annoyed by that links are of different color. Guess what? Maybe you shouldn't place yourself as, if that you're one of these people, just maybe you shouldn't place yourself as the center of the world, because for some people, these links can really help it so much to navigate the page, especially if you're using keyboard navigation. I know that this may sound foreign right now. Please don't worry. You'll have plenty of opportunity to practice that. I'm also not expecting you to remember that. Don't worry. I took care of that. You have clear instructions at any point. Then be descriptive. Add descriptive labels for inputs. So, yeah. Basically, if you have a form, you know that you have a label. The label is not only there for you to, I don't know, play with later on when you need to grab some value or whatever. It is also for that if there is a screen reader and you don't have the value, then the screen reader will read it as form, first input, second input, and then you don't know what you're supposed to write, right? So have labels that are actually descriptive. Don't be lazy. So if it's a name or username, you know, that's a difference. Name means your first name, most probably, or last name, or full name. And username means username. So don't be lazy. And second, keep the outline and focus attributes on your elements. Here I'm hinting towards CSS. So we have outline and focus. Actually, do you know what those are? Does anyone know? Go ahead, Secret.
Focus is when something is like targeted via tab.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So go ahead. Do you want to add?
It's like not kind of, it's not a border, but like it covers the entire element. It highlights what's being tapped into.
Mm-hmm. So both of you are right, and complementing each other's answers. Thank you. So focus, it's not only when you use keyword navigation, you can also just click on it, right? And that means that this element will be in focus, right? So it should change some, it should be easily spottable, and also it would help a person with screen reader navigate through website. It may sound foreign, don't freak out, because there's gonna be practice connected to that. An outline, it is what it sounds. It is an outline around an element. Let's say focused element, right? So then you know when the focus is moving, I will show that in a second, you exactly know where we are on the website. Okay, so that's you. And then also Janet in her blog referred to one study where basically the bottom line is that if you're doing these 5 things, you're already better than 1/3 of the websites on the whole internet. So I think that, so those are just like bare minimums for people to navigate the internet. There's just so much more. However, even like 2/3 of websites don't even meet those basic necessities, right? So please do better. Okay. Do you have any questions, comments, confusion? Yes. Worries?
For add descriptive labels for inputs. So you know, like some input fields have like value, the default value, would screen readers not be able to read that, or?
You mean like the default value?
Yeah, like if
Like-
I have like a form that says like username, password, instead of writing labels for them, I just put, default value so people know what the username here, what password here.
Yeah, I mean, so I would guess, so again, like from what I remember, and also if anyone has any other experience, please share. From what I remember, if you do default value, some screen readers will read it. However, it can be really confusing because one default value can hint to so many different things, right? So you don't want to end up, let's say if your default value, let's say you are using Google Maps and you have destination and point of, starting point, you don't want those two to be mistaken, And then you also, from just default value, you wouldn't know which one you're being asked for, yeah? So in general, just use the labels, yeah. And, with regards to forms, yeah, also you can, there are so many things about forms. I actually created a little checklist for you so that not to overwhelm you. But it's also good, for example, to make sure that if you only can, to enable auto-completion so that people who actually, for whom it's not too easy to, write all the things, they can just insert 3 letters and then your website will know exactly what they want, right, to write. So that's perfect. Any other questions, confusions, or worries? Okay, cool. So basically, when you're thinking about accessibility, make sure that your website is, perceivable, meaning that it is possible to see what's on it, but not only by you, but also with people with low vision, for people who have any kind of, who struggle with colors, and I'm going further into that, in the README. But basically perceivable, just make sure that, for example, the website's contrast does not exclude anyone, because it is very easy for us to exclude people who, for example, have low vision, and because of that, you would not see where, for example, one element is ending and another one is beginning. Then you want to make your website operable, meaning that, if you're asked to do something, that you can actually do that all the buttons are clickable, that all the links are clickable, that it is actually very clear where a link is, then the next value would be understandable, meaning that not only the text, not only the layout of the page is logical and connected to our intuition, but that also the text, the content is easy to understand. So, maybe you have aspirations to be a great writer, but maybe, writing documentation, technical documentation, is not really where you want to showcase all your fancy schmancy, sophisticated vocabulary. Maybe you want to write in plain English so that people who are immigrants or people who are tired or feeling imposter syndrome can actually go through your documentation, right? So I don't know whether you know that, but there's plenty of research on how stress influences our cognitive abilities, which I'm not saying anything new, but what I found shocking and kind of empowering was that when you're stressed, your IQ can drop down by 20 points on spot. So now imagine, we all feel imposter syndrome. So now imagine you're just starting a job and your company didn't care to actually write documentation in a great manner. And so good luck with that. I guess that Mod 3 students sometimes have this aspiration to make a game as their mod project, and then there are a few different libraries for that. One of them would be Phaser. So you will experience what I'm saying. The documentation is horrible. So they did not care about understandable. So basically, so both the content and interface of your app should be logical. Maybe also logical is not the best word, because logic is also experienced and understood differently in different contexts. just note to myself. And then robust, which basically boils down to that, make sure that people of different backgrounds and also using different assistive technologies can use it. Yeah, but now the trick is that assistive technology evolves. So you want to write your app in a way that in 2 years, it's going to be easy to update for assistive technology, and not that you will have to, just destroy the whole project and start from scratch. Yeah, exactly. So this is more like, so those are the official web accessibility guidelines. I just wanted to bring them here because I am referring to them in my README. Just so we are all on the, I'm not expecting you to remember that, or actually no one ever expects you to remember that. Cool. Okay, so now the practical part, because I believe in practice. So I also don't really like to tell people what they should do and how they should, go about their life. So I prepared 2 versions of this. What's gonna happen? Actually 4. So, and you see, before even I go into that, just reach out at Sylwia Vargas. And now you may think, what is this leading to? Like whatever platform you choose, even Venmo, Sylwia Vargas. In the beginning, I was thinking that, like on Twitter, I just joined Twitter recently. Yeah, everyone has such fancy, sophisticated nicknames. And in the beginning, I was kind of embarrassed about that. I'm just Sylwia Vargas. But then I'm like, actually, that makes life so much easier, because if you know how to spell my first name, there you go. So, now I'm thinking maybe I shouldn't be sharing that, because then I'm enabling stalkers. But hey, just try me. Anyway, so choose your own adventure. I don't want to create more suspense. So for the folks who don't feel like, oh my god, I cannot look at code anymore today, then I would encourage you to do a little bit of discussion with your partner or with yourself if you don't feel like socializing, which is fine. And you would clone the repo. You will know in a second which one. Then those are the instructions, right? So you will open one file, and then in your pair or with yourself. And please be assertive. If you don't want to work with people at 6 p.m., that's fine, discuss how we might solve the problem. You will see. And then for people who actually love coding, I would really like to try try themselves with accessibility. Then actually there is an exercise for you. So, but where is that? I will show you. Oops, 1 second. Oh, I don't know how do I, oh yeah, this. Cool. So if you go to GitHub, and then if you go to, it's Sylwia Vargas. I misspelled my own name just now. That's perfect. Okay. Okay, if you go to GitHub and then Sylwia Vargas, that's me. And then you just click on the first item, Accessible Web 101, right? And then this is something that I would say you can fork, or you can just clone, or you can fork and clone if you have such a wish. And I will also walk you through the README. So in the beginning, I just provided some introduction, because why not? Then before we go into the checklist, I also give you more READMEs so that you can, if you're very excited about that, you can actually, educate yourself. And then useful tools. Among them, there is the contrast checker, which is an absolute marvel. Let me show you. So this is like a little console that helps you find like which colors are good for accessibility and which are not, like this is fail. You can also reverse. This is still fail. Random, fun. So I love this. It has made my life so much easier. And also, folks who are who don't really love CSS. Folks who don't really love CSS too much, but still want to have beautiful apps. Usually people use Bootstrap or Semantic or Materialize or all those. I would say go deck, because that's all accessible. All elements are accessible, and the elements of Bootstrap oftentimes are not. So that sucks. If you're actually going to use external library, make sure that at least it's accessible. I mean, it's easier to forgive if your app is not accessible because you just didn't have time to learn about it, but you did your CSS on your own, than if you actually chose a faulty library. Cool. And then I just tried to create a little checklist of the bare minimums. As you see, there's a lot. But basically, I prepared lots of questions. For example, did you make sure links are easily visible? Did you include focus attribute in your CSS or links, right? So just hint, for all those, you should say yes. If your answer is no, maybe this is something you would like to check, look into. And in some parts, I'm also giving you some more links. But so as you see, I'm also referring. So you see, like I'm referring here to the web accessibility values, so perceivable, operable, understandable, robust. But I'm also throwing in 2 additional ones. So the first one is about the code base. So how did you name your variables? Is it easy to follow? Did you sacrifice, code readability for fewer lines? Is your documentation inclusive? By the way, this hints to, maybe I should do, yes. By the way, Google has a very good how-to on, ableist language, gender neutral language, how to write documentation that actually doesn't hurt anyone. Cool. And then I was also thinking about, other ways we make our products, services inaccessible. Like, for example, does your page require high-speed internet, or who cannot afford your app, So when you're thinking about accessibility, just really think about, how to make your services, your products, just fun for everyone, right? Unless you don't care, then we should talk. Anyway, I really deeply care about open source and about collaboration, and I think that the more people, the better. So you will see that this is far from perfect, and I really, really, really invite everyone who has like a little inkling to come and work with me. Yeah, you can. I welcome your feedback, your pull requests, your ideas, tips. This is just the beginning of a bigger project. And so I already hint on some, where I'm guilty. Like, for example, index.html does not have yet media queries and all that stuff. And now you may think, I don't know what media queries is. Don't worry, that's how you learn, So just contact me at, Sylwia Vargas, wherever, or like Flatiron Slack, and yeah, we can make this world a better place. Okay, cool. So now regarding choose your own adventure. So now that you have the repo, you can go 2 ways about it. Okay, I will just first also show you the website that. Okay, so I built a little page for this specifically lovely meeting that is pretty accessible. There are some things that are maybe not perfect, but there are also some options that make it more accessible than not. So you see, like when I was talking about focus and outline, this is what I mean. That you immediately see where you are, right? So there are 2 ways. So in this whole talk, I didn't talk at all about that. Accessibility doesn't only mean designing for people who have some health issues or who by the context are excluded, but also means that exclusion happens sometimes because of some temporary or situational conditions, or contexts. I didn't talk about that because you can read about it. And more so, you can also just explore this little app on your own. So just think about that, like, as I said, one solution can benefit so many different people, right? So for example, if you chose for your adventure, you chose to discuss and not really code, just look at this little table and just think, playing FIFA, how how will it work for a person with one arm, person with arm injury, or new parent. Now you can think, oh no, new parents shouldn't play FIFA. Oh well, new parents are very stressed, so maybe they actually should. So just look at some obstacles that I thought about, like calling 911, for a nonverbal person, or person with laryngitis, or person with heavy accent, and then in your pair or with yourself, just think, how might we make it easier for all these folks, to call 911, to access help in a fast manner. So I believe that you'll have fun with that, and otherwise, so this is for folks who are not entirely excited about coding anymore, and for folks who are like, yeah, let's go down to code. So then what you want to do, you want to go to this, after you clone the repo, you want to go to the exercise file and then open exercise HTML, and then go to your browser, paste it like this, and just see that this is horrible. And then I'm not leaving you like that, because you have instructions about what you may want to do. Maybe you want to just use keyboard navigation and see whether actually anything is happening, and you have all the hints. So first you have what you may want to check, and then hints how to check it or what to do about it. Other than that, I believe that everyone is responsible for their own learning, and everyone is responsible for fostering positive experience for everyone else. And I hope that you'll have lots of fun with that. But I also welcome questions, worries, and concerns, and feedback. And if you want, we can just go, instead of doing that, we can also just talk about the CSS for the other thing. Because I don't know whether you noticed, but this page, if you, oh my God, technology is killing me. Speaking of accessible stuff, Chrome. If you see, even if you scale down the window, it is everything. It is, how you say, the layout stays the same, right? So everything just is as it should be. And there is one huge bug, but I'm not gonna tell you. And I hope that you'll find it on your own, and then you'll fix it, because I'm also a full-time worker here, so some of us don't have as much time to go about bug squishing. Cool. So that's what I have. And do you have questions? And also, is there anything that you want to do? Questions, or I don't know, just let me know what's happening. Go ahead.
Are you familiar with the term heuristic?
Yeah.
Do you feel like
But if you have to ask this question, that already makes it inaccessible. So say, already introduce the definition that would be good for a 5-year-old.
So there is a term called heuristic, which means self-teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering if that was something that you thought about as an aspect of this model of inclusion. Or is that included in your model, essentially?
Like, what exactly do you mean?
Can I share an experience?
Yeah, go ahead.
Would that be helpful? I love video games.
Yeah.
I've worked in the video game industry. I have a high sensitivity to video games that don't explain how to play them.
Mm-hmm.
They just expect
People to figure it out.
Yeah, to figure it out.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that's the nature of the design a lot of the time. Like Mario Brothers has its result is heuristic, or it's self-teaching. When it comes to websites
Mm-hmm.
and the design of websites, do you feel that there are ways to make it self-teaching so that it's easier to understand?
Yeah.
Outside of examples that you've already given,
Mm-hmm.
that you could talk about, please.
So what do you think?
I think that
Mm-hmm.
Development tools in things like Google
Mm-hmm.
Chrome, since it's such a robust framework, will
Yeah.
definitely be helpful. I think auto-loading because there's this like assistive thing like where it starts talking and it asks you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's nice that it's asking me, but I think for people that don't, like if they can't see, they're not going to see it to ask them if they want to turn it on or not, like
Mm-hmm.
that it's speaking to them.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if like the sensitivity of the salesperson that's selling the laptop
Yeah.
would be to be like, hey, would you like me to set this up for you so that it'll respond to you
Yeah.
in your challenges, or not even challenges is the wrong word, but just in
Yeah.
your current configuration of experiencing reality.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, so I like to trick people. When I was teaching at the university, I would trick people a lot all the time, because I also believe that you learn through by engaging in lots of different emotions. And so, when I'm making pages like this, for example, it is a little bit that, because I'm not telling you exactly what you're gonna see. I'm kind of hinting at that, but you need to figure it out that maybe you want to hover over that. However, I also recognize that logic is, like the concept of intelligence and also concept of logic and logical thinking and all that stuff has been used over and over to exclude groups of people. I don't know whether you guys know, but in your very own country, IQ tests were used to determine whether people can vote or not, right? Actually, people of color. And so then it turned out that intelligence, as understood by people who created those tests, was cultural training and not really anything inherent. And because of that, I mean, while I am a huge fan of, treasure hunt, is that how you say? And discovering and learning on your own and, being all that stuff, brave and trying things out, I also know that this is more of a privilege, and many people cannot afford that, because in order to be brave, you have to feel safe to risk, right? So now what happens, for example, so I don't know whether you guys know, but I almost quit bootcamp, and I also almost didn't start. I was supposed to start. You can actually see that on my GitHub. I will show you. So my idea was that I would start very, very fast and see, I'm the roaring activist. So I started on November 27th. I started GitHub and I started doing pre-work. And then I'm like, hell no, this is so stressful. I don't understand anything. And then maybe 1 week later, I started again. I'm like, nope, I'm too stupid, And then look at that. I did not do a single lab, I'm not joking, until February, when I started doing, and I know that you can say, oh, because of the Learn ID. Nope, I was literally not doing anything because I was this paralyzed with stress, right? So imposter syndrome is really stressful, and people who have a lot to lose cannot really, oftentimes are in the panic zone, and because of that, they do not have the possibility to just go and explore and feel great, So while I like to trick people, and I like to, this is horrible, and I like to create environment in which people can go and explore and be brave and all that stuff, I also like to say exactly what you are supposed to do, right? So you can hover over each field or use keyboard navigation to uncover the descriptions. Because sure, maybe you would find it out by accident, but why to make it difficult, I think that anything is fun if everyone is laughing, right? Or if it doesn't exclude people. So yeah, I like when people learn on their own, but what I like even more is when people feel safe to learn on their own. I don't know. And yeah. Any other thoughts on that or questions about anything else or? Okay, cool. So now the stressful part is over. Thank you so much.